This time, I apologize that we're running a little bit later today on this public safety, Homeland Security meeting. We have a quorum in attendance today, and welcome y'all here today to this meeting. You know, I believe at this time we have probably enough time that we could probably handle one more bill that's been in the breast of the committee. At this time, I'd like to recognize Chairman Jaspers and Representative Ballinger to present House Bill 859. Good to have you all here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, for allowing us this extra time to bring for you House Bill 859. It's a sub you'll see in your folder. It's of course LC 410729S for the sub. I think you'll find it in there. Along with me, I have my co-sponsor of this bill, Mandy Ballinger, Representative Ballinger from, I forget which district it is.
District 23.
23, Canton, Cherokee County. So I'll try to make this quick because I know many of us have been through this before. But I know some of you are asking why. Why we're here again to allow Georgians the ability to not be a victim on our public college and university campuses. Yes, that's the bottom line, not be a victim. You know, I thought about when I was thinking about this in the last few weeks of, renaming it like the victim-free crime zone. But I know you know that even doing what we're proposing will not prevent all the abuse and attacks by the folks who are intent on doing us harm. Just like Representative Brockway's bill addressed one facet of this, we're looking at a different one. The number of criminal offenses on campuses continue to rise. In some cases stays the same. 99 sex offenses that are categorized as forcible in 2014, the latest numbers I could find. And those are from the universities and schools' own reporting, and I can share that where they come from. What we're asking for is the ability of Georgians who have the Georgia weapons carry license to be able to defend themselves from a threat if it presents itself. These Georgians are 21 years old. They have been fingerprinted. They've been background searched by both GBI and FBI databases. And then this information is evaluated by a probate judge in the county in which they live. I always like to say these folks are responsible men and women of Georgians who want to utilize their constitutional right to defend themselves. They can now carry throughout the state. In the last 10 years, we've changed a lot of things in grocery stores, some churches, bars, big box stores, buses, parks, and most government buildings. You don't hear about these Georgians being dangerous people. It does not happen. Current Georgia law allows for keeping of a weapon in one's car at a public college or university. They must leave it there when they leave their vehicle. No matter what time of the day or night, no matter what the personal threat is they may have against them. The penalty for carrying a weapon today is if you have a Georgia weapons carry license is a misdemeanor. If you have that license, a felony if you don't. No matter what threat you may be threatened by, while I'm saying it, it's a real world solution for real world problems. I wish that everyone in here does that. These men and women who attend these schools and walk amongst us didn't have to do this, but in today's world, it's a must. It's our constitutional right. We need to restore it. When you look at the bill, you'll see it's pretty simple. We're in the school safety part of the code in the prohibited spaces. You'll look at line 15, you'll see we're adding 19. And what this is doing is adding to already 18 groups of people who are now able to carry in these gun-free school zones. Some of these people have training and are law enforcement, but then some of them are not. Starting on line 15, we will allow those with a Georgia weapons carry license to carry in the school safety zone in a public college or university. Look down on line 19. These are the places that will not be allowed: fraternity and sorority houses at the campus, dormitories, athletic sporting events. Line 23 applies only the carrying of handguns that are concealed. This is a change from the past. We're proposing concealed only, and you'll see the line changing starts on line 27 that clears up and identifies the issue of concealment. It's what it is, and it's very, I think, very clear. Along with me, I've got Representative Ballinger, and she has some comments also she'd like to make from a different point of view, and hopefully to answer some of the questions that come up.
Thank you, Chairman Jaspers. I just want to address some of the questions that we had. There's the other question the other day. Why don't we allow guns in dorms or sporting events, and the need for gun storage facilities? We believe that people should be able to carry their weapons to be able to prevent them from being victims of crime. So we believe that people are going to be carrying their guns. They're not going to want, they're not going to lock them up. There's not going to be a cost associated with that. And continuing along that line, projected additional expense would be increased security, since campus security would have to be prepared for the scenario. Only students with a Georgia weapons carry license would be able to legally carry a handgun on campus. It is estimated that roughly 12% of the population of Georgia over 21 has a Georgia weapons carry license. Only about half the people I know who have a Georgia weapons carry license carry all the time. If the other half only carry some of the time, many students over 21 may be carrying. There's no way all students over 21 would be carrying, so that shouldn't really be a consideration for the committee. The reality is that a very small percentage of students over 21 will be legally carrying, but by allowing them to carry, we will be empowering them to not be victims. In the state of Georgia, we will be allowing them the opportunity to defend themselves. Georgia weapons carry license holders have been fingerprinted, vetted by the GBI and FBI. They currently carry their firearms in almost all areas of the state without incident. So why would colleges need added security? These people don't become suddenly dangerous when they step onto a college campus. If I were a student right now, I would be insulted if more security was hired to protect me from law-abiding citizens instead of hiring more security to protect me from robbers and rapists. It is patently absurd to suggest that additional security resources would be needed to accommodate the faculty, staff, or student license holders and to accommodate license holders on Georgia campuses. License holders are statistically the most law-abiding citizens of our state, and I think it's bordering on offenses to suggest that they will conduct themselves any less thoughtfully or lawfully the moment they set foot inside a university building. So, Chairman Jaspers, do you have anything else?
No. Of course, we'll be glad to answer any questions the committee has, and that's really our presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Jaspers and Representative Ballinger. Good job. All right, at this time, any questions of the authors from the committee members? Number 26.
It's me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I just want to thank you all for bringing this bill forward. I want to remind you something that happened last week. I had a constituent from Savannah, actually from Richmond Hill in the Bryan County part of my district, who was almost killed. He was shot in Athens last week. So great example of why an individual that wants to protect themselves should have the ability to do so. But I just wanted to emphasize that we've had a lot of crime, a lot of gun crime in Savannah lately. And to point to something you alluded to earlier, not one example of an individual, a law-abiding citizen with a concealed carry permit. Never once. And so I think some of these concerns are overblown. My daughter, when she went off and had a concealed carry permit, I felt better knowing that she had a weapon with her as she was living independently. Maybe she wasn't on the campus, but this would allow her to do so had she chosen to do so. And as a father, I certainly understand where you're headed here. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Well, I just want to add, Representative Petrie, that during we look at this stuff a lot. I remember looking at some work done by organizations in Florida, and specifically about women. They looked at, there were 20 incidences, there was 21, where a rape was attempted. 20 of them were not successful. 20 of them were not successful due to the person having a weapon. And that's 20 lives are changed by empowering Georgians. And I hope you hear the passion that I have for this, because it's there. And these are tough bills, and they're tough because you get a lot of criticism on both sides. Some people say you don't go far enough, some people say you go too far. But I want you to think about victims. And I think that's when we were on TV the other night, and on the drive home, Representative Ballinger talked about victims. And that's who we're talking about here, not the fluff and not the people banging drums saying, oh, they shouldn't be able to, but you need to think about the other side of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Waits.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding that in Texas alone that the additional cost to retrofit the campus for this provision was about $59 million over a period of 6 years. Have you looked at the fiscal note in terms of what this is going to cost Georgia institutions to retrofit for this provision?
They wouldn't need to retrofit. What would they need to retrofit for?
To be able to clarify who has a gun on them and who does not. The same provisions that you see when you're entering the campus in terms of retrofitting and making sure that you're able to detect when a weapon is on the campus.
No. There wouldn't be any security. I mean, are you talking about just the signs?
Well, I'm referring to what's happened in other states such as Idaho, Arizona, and Texas, where they're indicating that they have had these overwhelming expense fees in terms of security to retrofit to be able to monitor who has these weapons on campus.
I don't envision monitoring who has weapons.
Well, they have to check for the concealed carry permit. So once you come on, you indicate and you declare that I have it.
No, you don't. That's incorrect in the state of Georgia.
Okay.
If I might interject my thoughts on that, I don't know about retrofitting campuses. It always seems to be the same stale argument that's always made. If you look at what the Constitution says, if you look at the history, is that, and we've said this before, and I feel like it's beating a dead horse, but every individual is given the God-given ability to protect themselves regardless of what a law may be. And we live in a country where we have a constitution in a state that also has a constitution that guarantees people the right to bear arms for that particular purpose. Now, my thought about retrofitting may be that the universities hadn't done too good of a job of retrofitting when I pick up the newspaper and I see where there's been 4 armed robberies held in the library over at Georgia State, or untold crime on other campuses. So at the end of the day, citizens have that right to protect themselves, and if they don't wish to exercise their Second Amendment right granted to them by the Constitution, that's the reason we just passed a bill a while ago to give them something a little bit fluffier that doesn't hurt their ears when they protect themselves. Number 17, who is that? Mr. Glanton.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. I'm okay. I was going to.
Mr. Clark.
Just to addressing the retrofitting, that the thought was brought up that they need to check and see who has a firearm. We're dealing with concealed only in this bill.
That's correct.
And isn't it currently against Georgia code for any law enforcement officer to approach somebody solely on the purpose of having a firearm on their person?
That's correct.
Okay. So there wouldn't be any need to increase, because that would be breaking the law if they're just trying to check everybody for guns.
Yeah, no, you're correct. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Clark. Mr. Lunston. I believe it's that. Are you number 23?
Colonel.
Oh, Colonel, I'm sorry. Colonel Hitchens. Who is number 23 down there? Mr. Gravely, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that y'all have done on this bill. I guess it was the question that I had asked Mr. Downs previously, where in some universities across the state, I know that the school that I went to, though we didn't have designated fraternity or sorority houses, we had designated clubs, and some of those club facilities were off campus. They weren't even a part of the college campus. So if I am a license holder and I wanted to participate in what I guess would be a fraternity that's off the university campus, would I be prohibited if that's a private fraternity or sorority house? It's not on the college campus or the ground that the college or university owns. How would we then, would those houses be subject as well?
The way I understand it, can certainly look into that further to make sure. But Representative Gravely, fraternities and sororities are a part of the university, whether they're on campus or off. If they're an off-campus private organization, they're just that.
Okay.
And so I think that kind of is how I've interpreted, how it's been interpreted to me.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Let's see if we got somebody else. Mr. Holcomb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Jaspers, when did you learn that you would be presenting this bill?
About an hour and a half ago. That would for sure be here when Chairman Powell told me.
To your understanding, was there any notice to the public that this would be discussed today?
I'm not the chairman of this committee, no, sir.
But to your knowledge, are you aware of there being any public notice?
No, not that I'm aware of, no, sir.
Okay. What did you mean when you said the purpose of this is to restore constitutional rights?
Well, I guess we feel, those of us who are on the pro-constitutional right of being able to defend yourself, that the creation of the gun-free zone back in the 90s, the early 90s, took that right away from Georgians. You know, prior to that, you know, I also remember being at the University of Georgia in the 70s, having a weapon there was not against the law. But it became against the law. And then when it has done that, it has created the gun-free zone. So yes, that it is a taken away, and we're restoring those people's constitutional rights to defend themselves so that they're not becoming a victim.
With that premise, can you explain to me why you have the exceptions in lines 19 and 20? Let's start with athletic sporting events.
Well, I think that was that's where we found common ground that would be able to do that. But you got to understand, Representative Holcomb, when we tear down the wall of a gun-free zone, that whole area, that prohibits, or that I guess inhibits or threatens those who would do us harm, because they don't know who's armed there. That's why the concealed language is there. We don't want it broadcast who is carrying there. And the people who want to do us harm are not going to know. I think it will reduce the crime and assaults that we've seen in those areas.
What do you mean by common ground on the athletic sporting events?
What do I mean by common ground? What do you mean?
It was your phrase in terms of why you have this as an exception.
Oh, I just say this, like I say here on 19 athletic sporting events, student housing, and not limited to fraternity and sorority houses.
Okay.
That's what I have written.
Right, and what I'm trying to understand is if the purpose is to restore the constitutional rights, why do you still have these limitations?
Well, I have to, as you all know, to attempt to garner enough support that I can pass this bill through the House and the Senate.
So is it your opinion that in these places constitutional rights are still being denied by this measure?
Well, they absolutely are.
So what would be the status for a student that lives on campus under this bill in terms of their access to weapons?
Well, they wouldn't, just like myself. When I walk to the Capitol, I have to leave my weapon in the car. If I walk across Georgia State's campus, I can't carry there. We're not requiring or really ask universities or anyone to provide storage or anything like that. You look at dormitories, et cetera, those are predominantly people, vastly predominantly people under 21. So they're just exempts them out of it. We felt those are generally unsafe locations. They're not locked well. You know, people leave doors open, and you just don't want to have that in that situation. But when we're walking through, I make the decision to go into a restaurant. If I can carry there and I want to, I can. It's a decision I make as a Georgia weapons license carrier to do that. And the student with that permit or license will do the same thing.
Now, a few years ago when we heard testimony on this issue, I recall there being testimony from the Chancellor, the Board of Regents, and others. Have you conferred with them this year on this measure? And if so, what is their position? Has it changed from where they were a few years ago?
Well, I'm certain that has not. No, I haven't.
You have not conferred with them?
No, sir, I have not. Okay. And I think what I add to that, you know, The best comment I heard from a student recently in an email to me was, those folks, those people who are in that administrative role, they're not like me. They're not having to go to class at night or be in that situation. And so, but I do, and I have to. And that's why I would like you to pursue and do whatever you can to give us that right back.
And I have one more question in terms of the language. If you can turn to the back page, the definition of concealed.
Yes.
I understand the first part, which is carried in such a fashion that does not actively solicit the attention of others. But then there's an and it says and prominently, openly, and intentionally displayed only for purposes of defense of self or others, which wouldn't seem to be concealed at that time. Can you explain to me a little more about what you mean by that language?
Yes, sir. In that moment, in lines 28 and 29, that you have to use your weapon for that self-defense as it describes in 29, it will be prominently, openly, and intentionally displayed, as it says, only for the purposes of defense.
Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holcomb. And I might can answer one of your questions. If you'll notice, your meeting notice had two bills, and you also had on the agenda subject to change at the call of the chair. And if anybody didn't know this bill wouldn't come up, it's because they've been living in a cave. It's probably been one of the least held secrets up here that this bill was going to be held today. Thank you.
Yes, sir, but you would agree that it's not on the list?
I would agree that it was called subject to the call of the chair. Ms. Waits.
Yes, sir. Does the authors of the bill anticipate a tuition increase or a hike, given, again, the retrofitting as well as any additional security costs that may be incurred?
Ms. Waits, Representative Rates, with all due respect, I think absent any factual basis for the retrofitting that you're alleging will be necessary, which we obviously dispute, that will be necessary here in Georgia, we anticipate no cost to the university system at all for this bill.
Okay, one more question, Mr. Chairman. So there is no fiscal note on this bill right now at this time?
There's no need for a fiscal note on this bill.
Okay.
Colonel Hitchens.
I waive.
Right back.
Mr. Hightower.
To Representative Holcomb's comment on have you conferred with the universities. Oftentimes what we learn up here sometimes is that we try to work with others. And at some point when someone tells you, we're not going to work with you, we're not going to work with you, we're not going to work with you, at some point in time, you stop working with that person. And I think that's what Chairman Jaspers has run into. For the past 3 to 4 years, we've been working on this bill since I've been here for the past 5. I know they've been trying to do that for even longer than that. And all they keep getting is the Regent side saying, no, we're not going to work with you. No, we're not going to work with you. We're not going to compromise. We're not going to do anything. And at some point in time, you have to just decide, I'm not going to try anymore to confer with them. And I'm going to do what I think is right. And I think that's what Chairman Jaspers is doing here. He's doing what he thinks is right. And we can try to paint him into a corner and say, well, this bill, he didn't confer with the university system. Well, that's because the university system has stood up and said they will not work with you. If someone tells you point blank, I will not work with you, I will not compromise with you, why have a discussion with that person continuously? In this situation, we've exhausted that conversation with them. They refuse to, on any level, compromise, sit down at the table, try to work out something. They refuse to do that, in my opinion. Because I was right there beside him last year when he was trying to do this, and they refused to do it. Their stance was, we're the powerful Board of Regents, and we can make it die. And so eventually you just have to call a bluff, so to speak. You have to see where the chips are going to lie. And I think he's trying to do that in the best way he knows how. And that's by bringing this bill to protect others.
Thank you, Mr. Hightower. Let's see. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know it's getting late, but I wanted to share with you, it just so happened today, I received a letter from a student at Kennesaw State. It's an honors student. And I'll quote from his letter, "As a commuter student and as a leader at the school, I normally find myself on campus commuting back and forth from home at all hours of the night and day. Knowing what has occurred on and around the college campuses around Georgia, I believe it is truly right and just for those of us who are of age and who have a Georgia weapons carry permit to have the means to defend ourselves in a worst-case scenario." I think this sums up what many of the students feel, and we are taking away their rights. Some people believe this bill would have made some big distractions, and as he noticed, it has not. Other changes that have happened. This is a good bill, and I want to thank you for bringing it.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Mr. Clark.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to take a moment and also thank you for working on this. Over the last few days, there's been a lot of emails coming in about lines 19 through 20, and I just want to thank you, Chairman Jaspers, for you've worked hard on getting a bill that is likely to pass both chambers of the General Assembly, even though it might not be to your liking, my liking, and everything we want. I think you've hit a good bill when you've got people that are anti-gun telling you to oppose it, and then some that are really radical pro-gun telling you to oppose it, that you landed in the middle, and I think you've done a good job, and I just want to thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Representative Clark. Number 23, who is that?
Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I want to thank y'all. I've listened to the debate, and I've got two technical schools, two universities in my district I share with Representative Hightower. And the debate, the negotiations, really at the forefront of my mind is this. These armed thugs, these thieves, these guys that came in and scared the living daylights out of these students that were paying money to get an education. They didn't confer with them before they asked to steal their laptops, their wallets, their cell phones. I can't imagine if I were a father with a college-age daughter right now. Mine will be there, God willing, and I hope darn sure that our time here in the legislature, at least while I'm here, that we can look back and say, I did something to give them that right, that option. It's already a God-given right, but that option to say, you know what, if it's a taser, if it's a stun gun, or if it's a 38, or if it's a 9mm, that I can sit and I can study and know that if someone does approach me, either on my way back to the dorm or in the library or walking across campus one day, that I've got a fighting chance to defend myself, to say no, to at least have an option to fire back or to protect myself in that situation, especially as the father of little girls. I thank you very much for that. I know y'all have worked diligently on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gravely. And just to see, we've got Ms. Waits again. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, I have a great deal of respect for this body as well as the authors of the bill. I just want to go on record clearly that 78% of individuals in the AJC poll that were tallied indicated that they do not support a measure for campus carry. And I'm deeply disturbed that we would impose our will, given that the experts have weighed in on this conversation, given that they deal with this demographic on a daily basis, and they have said that we do not want this provision. I agree we have a problem. I'm very clear about what happened at Georgia Tech as well as Georgia State, and I agree we need to do something. But I believe that this is an extreme measure given the population that we are talking about. And I just simply wanted to go on record and just ask that we consider something else before we make this decision. Thank you.
Duly noted. 24, Mr. Lunston.
I would just like to make the comment that the Second Amendment is not an extreme measure.
Thank you. Ms. Waits, would you like to say
Yes,
another? Nobody can say that this chair isn't certainly open to open
you certainly
dialogue
have
and
been
debate.
extremely patient, sir. We really appreciate it. I'm hungry. Given that we are not allowed to bring our weapons into the Capitol, I guess my question is, to me, that seems to be imposing on the Second Amendment right as well, and I'm wondering why no one has brought a measure to allow weapons into the state Capitol. I don't understand that.
That's a great point.
Well, I think that would be the first measure versus this measure. Would you not agree? Given that we're talking about kids, these are children.
Well, they're not. These are adults. These are.
Are you saying, Ms. Waits, do I understand you right? Are you saying that perhaps we should open up the Capitol grounds?
I would support that.
Could I be your second signer if you introduce that bill?
Sir, we can go ahead and just put it in the bill right now. I would support that measure wholeheartedly.
Julius, Ms. Waits and I will meet you after this meeting to get that bill drafted up. And I could almost say we might can have time to get it. I know we'll have it introduced in time to get past this committee. Julius, please do. Let's see, Mr. Gravely again.
Mr. Chairman, if you're giving me the opportunity, I would 100%. I've been asked that question before. Matter of fact, on my Facebook page, somebody had posted, "You all want to put guns everywhere, but you don't want them at the Capitol." And I responded 100%. I believe we should have them here, not just for legislators, but for anybody that comes in and out of that door. It's a Second Amendment right. We could. I mean, if you. Listen, we're asked to disarm in the most contentious building in the state of Georgia. I don't understand that. I've never understood that.
Can we allow an exception for Representative Gravely?
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, can I explain that part of the bill? I mean, that was in House Bill 60, Representative Waits, that addressed the Capitol and any other government building. That means a government building in Clayton County, that allows them, that government building, if they choose to screen everyone coming in or out of it, to make it a gun-free zone behind the state's security, whether it be a sheriff's department or whatever. And so the Capitol falls into that because they screen here too. But just like any building in any county within the state, we gave them the ability to do that too.
Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my colleagues again, I've heard the term, some different terminology here that has referenced immaturity and that they're kids. Is it not true that in order to obtain the Georgia weapons carry license, you have to be 21?
That is correct.
And is it also not true that we have members of the military who have gone overseas and defended this country, and we have trusted them at 18 years old to go and fight for our freedoms, and we've given them a gun to do so, and they come back home and they go to class at one of our colleges, and we tell them we don't trust you? Is that not also the way the law is currently right now?
That is true.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Waits, one more time.
I'm just curious. Is it not true that military officials have had the sufficient training to carry as well as to carry out those measures? And I don't believe that college students, and given that we don't have a training permit, a requirement in our carry provision, that would not be the same argument.
Well, if that's what the lady believes, then so be it. All right. At this time, I want to open the floor up to testimony.
If you need, yeah.
Well, it's not that I need you. It's your right. I mean, please be assured, it's not that I need you, but it's certainly your right.
Yes, sir.
And, we do have open.
We weren't
commitment.
planning to come and testify. We were just here to observe. And again, I think it's no surprise to anybody that we support the current law the way that it is. And so, I just want to go ahead and share that with the group.
Very good.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else here that wishes to be heard? Mr. Tony, I know you represent the private. You like the way this is written because of the private schools are treated as private property?
Mr. Chairman, I haven't seen the substitute, but if the language is as we discussed, then we are thankful that the committee if the committee approves this substitute, that the committee values private property owners' rights at least equally with the Second Amendment.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Thank you, Mr. Tony. Do we have anyone else here today that would like to be heard that won't get up and preach a sermon? Mr. Monroe. Oh, excuse me, Ms. Frazier.
Mr. Chairman, the two gentlemen that just came up, they didn't identify themselves, so I don't know who they were.
Would you stand up and let Ms. Frazier know who you were, since you weren't supposed to be here?
Sorry. Hey, Roland Downs with the Board of Regents, University System.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Jet Tony, representing the Georgia Independent College Association, which is the 26 not-for-profit private colleges in Georgia.
All right. Ms. Frazier?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's the proper procedure.
Thank you. One up. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, for the gentleman from representing colleges and universities, yes. My question to you is you said that you support the law as it is. My question is a little bit more definitive. Do you oppose this legislation?
Well, I think we support the current law the way that it stands today. We feel like it's good policy, and our institutions are supportive of the way the current law is written today.
I don't understand the answer.
That's a correct answer. Thank you. Thank you.
That's the answer I accept at this time.
Mr. Gravely. Mr. Gravely.
It would be for Mr. Downs. So just on that question, so if we changed the current weapons policy as it is today, are you saying that the university system would say, well, we support the current weapons code as it is today? If we changed it, would y'all oppose the change?
I think you would see the faculty and the institutions who feel like the current law that's on the books today is good policy for them and at a comfort level for them that I think is, you may hear from those folks. I can't tell you. I don't know. So again, they're comfortable with the way the current law is written today, and feel like that's good policy for their campus environment.
Thank you.
So,
Rollins, if you might stay for just a minute. I see we're going through a recycling.
yes, sir. Sure.
I do apologize, Mr. Chairman, but I guess I'm not hearing what I want to hear. And has this bill or this legislation or legislation relating to this bill been discussed by the colleges and universities? Sure. I hear it's been discussed
for years. I mean, I think
so they're very much aware that this bill was coming.
Sure.
So if they wanted to adamantly oppose it, they've had a year and a half to 2 years to not only voice that opposition, but to send us something as a committee expressing explicitly that opposition. Would you agree?
I think the institutions and the systems have been consistent over the years that the current law that's been on the books for a number of years is sound policy, and they support that current law.
And so if this bill were to pass out today, it would then become current law. Would you at that point support the current law?
Well, let me make sure I follow you. I think that anything, as it goes through the process, we will be as engaged as you want us to be.
In other words, what you're saying, you'll be law-abiding citizens.
We are always.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Waits, one more.
I'll waive, sir. I think he's been very clear that the universities.
Thank you, Ms. Waits. All right.
Thank you.
Rollins, thank you so much. Mr. Monroe, and if I might remind you, brevity gets you a lot of points.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I've been accused of many things, but preaching I don't think has ever been one of them. John Monroe, GeorgiaCarry.org. We strongly support the bill. And this actually is not our first rodeo with this. We've been working on this for quite some time. And I think when GeorgiaCarry.org was formed, the current law was there was a 1,000-foot zone around a university at which you could not carry a gun. And at that time, the university system said they supported current law. And then the 1,000-foot zone was erased. And then next we said, you should be able to carry a gun in your car on campus. And the university system came along and said, well, we support the current law. And now you can carry a gun in your car on campus, but you can't take the gun out of your car. And the university system is saying, once again, it supports current law. I think the theme is whatever the legislature changes the law to, they support it, which is fine. We encourage the legislature to change the law to support this bill. I'd like to point out that under current law, which has actually been the law for many, many years, you can carry a gun into a classroom, or you can carry a gun into a dormitory or a sorority house or a fraternity house if you have a license and if you're going there to pick up or drop off a student. We don't have any issues there today with those things going on. There's no retrofitting necessary to accommodate the fact that there are people with licenses who do exercise that provision in the law. I know people who do. They go into classrooms, they go into dormitories, they pick up or drop off their students, their children, or whoever happens to be going to school. So that issue is already going on, and there aren't any costs associated with that. There also aren't any costs of retrofitting for when we got rid of the 1,000-foot zone or when we started letting people having guns in general in their cars on campus. So I don't think there's really any issue with retrofitting or costs. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield. I'll answer questions. Otherwise, ask the committee to pass the substitute.
Any questions of Mr. Monroe? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have anyone else? Mr. Holcomb, do you wish to answer Mr. Monroe? If you'll wait, we have Mr. Holcomb that'd like to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Monroe, when did you get notice that this would be brought before committee today?
I think when I got to this building, I stopped by Chairman Powell's office at around 3:30 to see what the agenda was and talked to the staff in his office and got a copy of a substitute bill. So I learned at that time that it was likely to come up.
Thank you.
Mr. Holcomb, you're certainly persistent with that question, if nothing else. Thank you, Mr. Monroe. Now, do we have anyone else who wishes to testify either for or against this bill? No? At the discretion of the chair, I'd like to say just a word before I turn this over for the summation of by the authors. As I listen to this, and it seems to be the yeas versus the nays, and I hear a lot of things, and I've seen a lot of committee meetings. First, I want to clarify that this bill has been called at the discretion of the chair. No, it was not a secret. I think I had told my colleague, Ms. Frazier, earlier today that there'd probably be another bill that's going to be called up today. Mr. Holcomb, I would certainly encourage you to maybe talk to the chairman of this committee occasionally if you'd like to know what discretion of the chair means. I'd be more than glad to, even though you seem to ask some pretty direct questions. It pretty well showed your position on the bill. I also am one that I'd like to thank the authors of the bill in advance. I would like to thank you for doing your duty as an elected representatives, not necessarily for the time and effort that you've put into this, but for doing what is right and upholding the Constitution. But I would also like to say make a few other pointed comments to some of the questions that have been asked today. No, I don't think that the Constitution is being fully utilized by any type of anything short of private personal property rights of being excluded. But I also understand the legislative process. It's a three-pronged process. One, that it's got to pass the House, then it has to pass the state Senate, then we go through the legislative finagling through conference committees, and we're sure we're all familiar with that. And then whatever passes out, it then goes to the governor of the state to either be signed or to vetoed. At that point, if it becomes law, it becomes law, and then whether you be the university system or whatever, you'll adhere to the law. My comments to the university system have been pretty sharp at times, but it's no particular personal disrespect, but it's just how the system is, that we have a constitutional provision that the university system is, in fact, a fourth branch of government almost, and that's just what it is. But in answer to the questions that I continue to hear from some of the folks on this committee, you know, the Second Amendment is what the Second Amendment is. It speaks for itself. If you believe in the Second Amendment, there's no extra cost, no fiscal note necessary. In Georgia, we have a system, and that's called a concealed weapon permit. And I'm very familiar with it because I was part of the passage back in the 90s after the Brady Bill. We didn't know that it was going to be the foundation of being able to carry. We passed the concealed weapon permit back in the 90s after the Brady Bill so that Georgia citizens would not have to wait an undue amount of time to be able to buy a firearm. So once you have been vetted, once you've had a background check, once you've gone through the procedure that you're not a convicted felon of any type of stripe, and even as hard as it is to define mental health, we have some definitions of the mental health code in there that you haven't been involuntarily committed, that you haven't been adjudicated by a court of law of being mentally incapable. And that's the best that can be done because first and foremost, we do not want to abridge anyone's rights. Now, the bill before you today, you know, it's not perfect by any means. But I will tell you that it is certainly one that could pass muster. You know, in the end of the day, there's always people who are going to have questions about anyone who might carry a weapon into a frat house. And I hear a lot of the questions about maturity level. Well, you know, you got to be 21 years of age. You've got to be vetted. That's pretty mature at 21 years of age. It certainly is. So, you know, there's nothing perfect about it, about fully restoring the rights. But the Second Amendment, it is what it is. And it's up to us to pass what we can pass, that we can get enough votes. It takes 91 votes in the House, and it takes 29 votes in the Senate to pass a piece of legislation. And I thank y'all for what you're doing and what you've done. At that point, I see that I have also prompted another question from a colleague. Ms. Frazier.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, when I spoke with you earlier today on the floor of the House, it was in regard to House Bill 792, the bill that we took up today on the regular schedule. I had no idea that you would bring up House Bill 859, so I wanted on the record that Representative Frazier did not know that this bill was coming up, because the way you just stated it, it was as if I knew this. And I want you to understand that I did not know what bill, and I know it's at the discretion of you, Mr. Chairman, on what bills you call, but I do not want it to be on record as if I knew this bill was coming up.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
At this point, what is the will of the committee?
Move to pass.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any other discussion from any of the members? Ms. Waits.
Yes, sir. Given the fact that there are a number of people from my district as well as around the state of Georgia that would have loved to have been here to be a part of this conversation, may I ask for a recorded vote so we can be clear who supported this measure and who did not?
Oh, you can certainly assure yourself we'll have a recorded vote.
Thank you, sir.
All right. We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any other discussion? Do we have any subsequent motions or any amendments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. And because we need a recorded vote, let's just make this easy. Let's get the ones who are opposed to the bill. We have 1, 2, 3 in opposition. And if you would, please record their names. All in favor, raise your hand. And while the chair does not have to vote, he will vote. Got all of them, Abby? Well, the chair wishes to thank you again for this bill. Is there any other issues that this committee wishes to bring before it tonight? If not, this meeting stands in recess.